Correct. And thanks to IMPAKT for inviting me to open this panel called Information Warfare. Just 3 weeks ago, this European Commissioner accused me of allowing groups spreading misinformation and violent and terrorist content on X, and they're threatening me with fines worth 6% of my company's annual revenue. Well, people who know me know I'm not impressed by that. I think it's all about freedom of speech, and as I said before, I just want to create a space where a wide range of beliefs can be debated in a healthy manner. And as long as the freedom of speech is guaranteed, people will be able to tell the difference between truth and lies. I saw the lineup of the panel, and it doesn't look like I will have a lot of friends today. But hey, freedom of speech. Your moderator is Marc Tuters. So let's go.
Thanks, Elon. I am Marc Tuters, and we're here today to speak about the Anonymity Dilemma, Part 2, Information Warfare. The idea of today's panel was curated by Emily, who is sitting over there in the audience. Yeah, please give her a round. Emily's a researcher and visual artist from Taiwan, a curator of the Taipei Digital Art Festival in 2022, and her artwork has been exhibited at the Taipei Museum of Art and at the iMuseum. The concept that Emily has come up with here is to have a discussion around the kind of two sides of anonymity, that it affords free expression and that it also affords toxicity. And this is something that we are doing in the context of the festival's theme of From Big Tech to Fair Tech. And I'd like to just sort of start off with this, what Ronald Diebert from the Citizen Lab in Toronto, which is where I'm from, calls the 3 painful truths of social media. That social media is built to invade user privacy and to monetize that invasion, that we are complicit in this transaction, and that social media is far from incompatible with authoritarianism. Just a few words about me before we start with the first panelist today. I am an internet researcher from the university, based in the University of Amsterdam. I also have a background in media art, which is one of the ways that I've been involved over the years with IMPAKT. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've studied internet subcultures, especially anonymous internet subcultures, in particular in 4chan, which you could think of as the bottom of the internet. And more recently, I've begun to look at Kremlin-sponsored propaganda in relation to the Ukraine war. So I would like to invite our first speaker today, whose name is Puma Shen, who's come to us all the way from Taiwan. He literally just got off the plane a few hours ago. Puma is an associate professor from... Puma, would you like to come and join us? Puma is an associate professor at the National Taipei University. His research focuses on white-collar crime and Chinese state propaganda, and he's a founder of the Kuma Academy, a Taiwanese nonprofit civil defense organization, as well as the chairperson of Doublethink Lab, which investigates disinformation and makes very interesting reports, which you can find online. Puma, you have like about 5 minutes for a brief presentation.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Okay.
So hi everyone, I'll keep track of the time because I really want to make sure that I finish that in 5 minutes. And I'm glad got invited here, and this is my first time to the country, so really glad. But I'm going back tomorrow morning, so I only have like less than 24 hours to explore the city. So I mean, at the very beginning, because I don't think I want to explain the details about what's the situation between China and Taiwan, but everyone might know that China claims that Taiwan is part of Taiwan, right? So there is a certain kind of like influence operation operation or even information operation, coming from China to Taiwan. But first, I think I really want to stress is about the target group, because when everyone talks about, especially the Chinese influence operation or information operation, they often talk about all these like conspiracy or fake news like all spread on the internet, but it's not the real case that here happening in Taiwan, because for China, there's a target audience for them to select there in Taiwan that they really want to have some influence on them. So for example, if you did a poll in Taiwan asking Taiwanese people whether they want to resist if China invades Taiwan, it's usually like 50 to 55% say that they want to resist, they want to fight. Another 20 to 25% say they want to surrender. And guess like which is the target group for China to do all this kind of information operation? You might have some answers, right? But it's neither of them. China always wants to target people in the middle, like people like 25 to 30% of them that are apolitical, who don't really care about politics, who care about their own lives, and who do not have any political stance. These are the target audience that China really wants to have some influence on. So there's a study here in Taiwan talking about whether people have different, perspectives on China, depending on whether they are using TikTok or not. And for people who already have the political stance, the TikTok have no impacts on them. But TikTok has a huge impact on people who are apolitical and who are in the middle. So as you could see here, all this, this is the graph that I drew in 2019. On the left, all these content from articles from Beijing, and they try to spread all these articles to different Facebook fan pages here in Taiwan on the right. As you could see that, different websites has been spread to different fan pages because they have been categorized all these people who are apolitical, like I said, into at least 50 groups of them. So different groups of people are reading different kinds of articles, have been tailored to their needs. And then when they want to spread all this, they could have like different kind of narratives. So for example, it's just happened last week when China wants to spread all the narratives about like polluted water from Japan. So as you could see here, if they are providing all this content from articles, providing the link into fan pages, it's very easy for Facebook to do something, right? Just to block the link. So once all Facebook block all these links, they try to transfer their strategy to using all these fake accounts, as you could see here, to post only the content but not the links to the different groups here. The Facebook groups here in Taiwan. So when I categorize all these fake accounts, you could see that these are the different geolocation for all these fake accounts, and I won't share how I can get it, but you could see that some of them could be from China, some of them from Singapore, some of them from Malaysia. So they are like all the cyber armies all over the world. And sometimes they use the screenshots instead of the link to share all these articles. And this is a very prominent one that I would see like since 2021, is that because it's very hard for them to share the websites, the link, the URL on the internet right now, so they're using the AI bots and the AI voices to read all these articles, from all these websites and transform that into YouTube videos. So right now they're posting all these YouTube videos on Facebook, and Facebook told me that it's impossible for them to block the YouTube URL. So these are tactics they have been keep evolving, and this is how they spread all these YouTube videos on, all these different fan pages or like Instagram accounts. These are the orange part are the bots, and the blue parts are the real groups that already exist on Facebook. So the last thing here last two things I really want to mention, because I think I'm so short of time. So this is another graph that we have been focusing on, is that people really focus a lot on the online disinformation. All this fake news has been spread. But as for CCP, as for China, they're much better than spreading all these rumors or conspiracy locally in our, local, organizations, through gangsters, through religious group. That's the way they spread the rumors since 1949. And these are all the organizations that we have been spot. More than 200,000 of them that has been spread disinformation. So they have been infiltrated locally and then established like close private to private chat apps to spread all these rumors locally there in Taiwan. So this is just happened last week when I traced some of the Facebook like fake accounts, like there are 1,000 of them. I traced their mobile signal, And we found out that there are like 500 mobile phones already in Taipei and belongs to one gangster group that are very, very close to China, and they're operating all these bot farms online. So when we really want to look into all these impacts we see, we have to combine what we see offline, all this infiltration we saw, and what they have been doing it online. Because with all this online disinformation and offline rumor, that's how China could have like real impacts on Taiwanese society. And I think I'm short of time, so I think I'll skip this. But this is a new approach that how they use online donation to really have some influence on online influencers, but without really connecting them. So I think I'll stop my presentation here, but I think I'll talk more during the Q&A session.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Please come and join me over here, and if you could have a seat there. Yeah, and then I would like to invite basically we're going to invite two more people one by one, and then we'll have an interaction about the presentations that we've just seen. So the next person I would like to invite is somebody who I met a couple of years ago through the tactical media lab that emerged immediately following the ground invasion of Russia into the Ukraine, Kris Petrasova. She's a cultural programmer at Belden Geluid, Sound and Vision in Hilversum, which manages one of the largest digitized media archives in the world, I believe. And she's also been very active in the Dutch Russian-speaking community here, raising awareness around Kremlin propaganda and its invasion of the Ukraine. Kris, if you would like to give us a brief presentation, please. Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I would like to talk briefly about how activists in exile communicate and gather with each other, how they organize. And it all happens online, obviously, because they are in exile. And how it is important to be digitally literate, to build your community, and to build also the democratic values also in this community. So just briefly back in time, 24th of February 2022, Russian army invades Ukraine. There are mass anti-war protests in Russia that are harshly brought down. There are directly, I think, in the next 2 weeks, there are a set of repressive laws, very repressive laws. Journalists and activists must leave country. They just pick up their stuff and go. They're spread all over the world, especially in Europe, in North America, also in Asia, like Kazakhstan, and the Caucasus, like Armenia and Georgia, Turkey also. Then there is a mobilization in September 22, and a set of more repressive laws, making it impossible for people to criticize mobilization. And by the end of 2022, almost 2 million Russians have left the country. And so there is an anti-war and opposition activity. They are moved out of the country. It is very dangerous to be an activist in Russia. Since the beginning of the invasion, there's almost 20,000 people being arrested and 800 people being prosecuted, and there is over 600 political prisoners now in Russia. And all these, so activists, and they try to track everything that happens. So there is a very good resource for that over the info. There is an English language resource also, so if you're interested, please follow them. They're also on Telegram. I will switch to Telegram, which is our main communication platform. So this is a map of the Russian anti-war community and anti-war organizations in exile. There are already over 200 organizations all over the world. They are being tracked. You can add your organization to the map. And these people also are on Telegram. That's a screenshot of Telegram. Telegram is, you probably know that, but it's for our community and for Ukrainian community. It's the main communication channel. And it is, in many ways, it is really great because you can create channels and you can create chats. And it is not really moderated, but I will come back to that later. So we all have to do it ourselves when we create our channels and chats. And there is also great, there's also a translate feature that happened. Yeah, that's actually, it's normal now. You have also on Instagram and on Facebook. It's nothing special, but it makes it also very, very easy to navigate different, different countries, different channels. So Telegram. Just a little short about the big hubs of our community, how our community is organized. We have the anti-war committee. It's a committee that was organized by famous public persons like Mikhail Khodorkovsky, and the people with resources also, known people, and they created, it's a kind of political oriented action in Europe. They are quite, they're quite successful in the European Parliament, for instance. And there is also a kind of a horizontal hub, which is called Platform antiwar.in. And it's anti-war initiatives platform. There's also an English language site. And there are, let me see, how many, over 40 organizations in 25 countries are connected to Platform. And a number of these people are in Russia, so they are anonymous. And for our community, it is very important to be able to stay anonymous and to be taken seriously also. But it is also a threat, of course, and this is the next slide. To be able to have and to build a strong and resilient community, and a community where all voices are heard, it is very important to be able to be anonymous. But it is also a question of security in both sides, because when you have an account on Telegram and you're anonymous, nobody knows if you're a real person or you're a bot, or maybe you're a real person but you're getting paid to spread Kremlin propaganda, for instance, or you're paid to be provocateur and to work in a chat group or in a community to not to bring people together, but to divide them. And this is a real big threat on Telegram. There is a lot of questionable content, of course, disinformation, propaganda, different schemes, different manipulations with images. And I could relate very much with what you said, with not linking to the source information, to the source information. So you have to be very, very resilient and very informed and digitally handy. There's also a lot of psychological pressure in exile. People who just moved very fast. There is psychological pressure, of course, because of the war. Espionage, there is a lot of espionage in Russian activists. Also care for family in Russia who stayed there and who also may face some prosecution. So there is security for activists. Is very important to stay anonymous, but also to check up people. Validating systems for users. So how can you validate if a person is who he says he is? We need to be able to trust each other, but because there is so much disinformation, so much provocateurs, how can we trust? Who can we trust? And digital is really nice. It makes us be able to come together, to build a community, but it's all people's work. So behind all the digital is always people who put a lot of effort into it. So we need to moderate our channels ourselves. And Telegram is one of the channels that is moderated by the Telegram backbone, not so much. But you can be, your channel can be blocked. For instance, that happened with the channel that created this uprising in Makhachkala in Dagestan, this pogrom kind of uprising, and the channel who kind of brought that up, it was blocked for a couple of days by Pavel Durov. He's there. This is maybe I'll keep it here. So thank you.
Thank you, Kris. All right, we have one more speaker who we're fortunate to have, Hind Dekker-Abdulaziz. Hind, would you like to come and join us? Hind is an MP in the Dutch Parliament, the House of Representatives, for D66, and has held that position since 2022, was previously a municipal councillor here in Utrecht, and is the vice chair of the Committee of Digital Affairs. So this area falls within your portfolio, and your expertise in particular being in the areas of privacy, discriminating algorithms, also AI.
Yeah.
So Hind, would you care to kind of reflect on what you've seen so far today?
Yeah, thank you again for introducing and inviting me here. I grew up in an authoritarian country. I thought that was not relevant today, but it's actually a little bit relevant because I'm from Iraq, and distrusting people is common in authority, and it was before digitalization. So what I see since the war in Ukraine and also now in Israel Gaza situation is the whole digital warfare also, but the discussion in our parliament is also about anonymity. Is it good to be anonymous? And if you are an activist on the internet, it's good to be anonymous, but the question actually is where does freedom of speech stops and threatening people and having hate speech begins? As a politician, and especially for my party, you get a lot of hate speech on online. So it's something to be to think about in politics, and I think that's you have shown that also. And you said in your presentation, like validating systems for users. That's something to be thinking about in the future and also now, because you should do something about it. Yeah.
Okay, so I think then what we can do today is basically try to have a discussion where we will try to balance these two approaches to anonymity as a good and as a kind of a threat. And I would, I think, like to just start with the use of, well, first of all, I'd like to start with what are we talking about when we talk about anonymity? Because I think maybe we tend to think of it as this kind of binary thing. You're sort of anonymous or you're not. But the presentations that we saw, they both touched, I think, or at least touch on areas where people have to achieve anonymity, which is not necessarily a straightforward thing. So I was wondering if you could, if either of you would like to reflect a little bit on what is anonymity sort of technically, when it comes to the life of a dissident in an authoritarian context. Would you like to?
Yeah, because obviously when you're online and you're communicating with each other, there's always an account. So an account on Telegram is always a telephone number. but there is, but who did this telephone number? Who uses it? You never know if person doesn't choose to share that number or to share information about her from himself. So you never actually know. So you have to follow that person a little bit and to see what this account writes or what it publishes, and if there is kind of something stinky about it, then you can test this person by kind of say like 2 + 2, how much, and then if this account doesn't answer, you just ban it because then it's a bot. But still, there are people who just want to stay anonymous and who are active in communities, and you have to respect that, I think. But when this person wants to achieve more than just saying something or posting an opinion, then then it comes to like, do you want to step out of this anonymity a little bit? Then we need to validate your personality, your presence in a way, and this is a difficult thing. This how is to validate that it's a real person, bona fide.
Yeah, so I mean, in my perspective, because I'm in the Department of Criminology, so I actually teach like not just white-collar crime, but I also teach open source intelligence. So technically, I would say that being anonymous is like super difficult. And so, for example, I mean, in Telegram or Signal, we all have like our phone number that have been attached to our account. And once you get one's telephone number, it's actually very easy to spot like who he is, what she is right now. And then it's not just about, I mean, the name of it, I mean, that is associated for the telephone number, but it's all about the signal, because the signal for telephone number is like the system is pretty old. So it's like very easy because like around us, there are like several cell towers. So once your telephone number has been connected to different cell tower, it's very easy to use the triangle to know like who is, I mean, right now here, the geolocation. So right now, I mean, for us, I mean, to investigate all these cases, we always really want to look into whether that telephone number has been static, like been within one building for like the whole year. So maybe that means that it's maybe the trolls or the bot farms that operate from that signal. So for me, it's like there's a study, I mean, conducted by one of my students, is that is it the trolls or the bots that do more damage to our society? Because when we see like bots, that means the telephone number never moved, like all these bots, I mean, compared to the trolls that are real people, but they're just like, I mean, haters on the internet. I mean, actually, through some simulation, we found that like bots actually does more harm to our society. So that's why in our investigation or in our study of information operation, we really want to look into the bots. So let me give you like one very brief example is that I was the vice president of like Taiwan Association for Human Rights. So we got lots of friends that are doing all this like environmental stuff, like environmental rights. And there's like one time my friends focus a lot on air pollution, and they said that we got lots of likes and shares on air pollution right now here in Taiwan. And we try to trace all these likes and comments. We link to like 20,000 accounts from China that try to talk about the air pollution in Taiwan. And each account could post more than 1,700 posts like per day talking about air pollution in Taiwan. And that is how they have the information operation right now.
Okay. This is very interesting, this distinction that you also brought up between bots and trolls. I think it's also something that Emily had prompted us to consider in the brief for this panel. I'd like to kind of ask you guys about that. When we think about information operations, we tend to think about how easy it is for people to sort of program some kind of mass effect. So that, you know, there'll be more likes and that'll push things up, and that will, that's the way that these systems have been designed to value information. But my impression is that there is increasingly this kind of problem of like so-called organic propaganda, where you have like influencers, maybe not big influencers, kind of small, medium to small size influencers who are in many countries, in authoritarian countries, are kind of inscripted or enrolled in some way, more or less directly, to kind of promote these narratives. Is this something that you observe in your research? For example, like maybe if we can talk first about the Russian example, because Russia's like a splinter net now, so there's like we're sort of not on the same internet exactly as many parts of Russia, but they still have their own sort of TikTok, I guess. They have their own. Certainly, they have VKontakte and other platforms. And what is the role of what is the relationship between the state and the and influencers when it comes to state propaganda, particularly around the invasion of Ukraine at the moment?
Yeah, it's very important to for president's administration at the Kremlin to keep the narratives that they want people to follow, people believe in. It's very important for them to bring it to all parts of Russia and abroad also. They're really doing that. And what you see on Telegram, for instance, Telegram is used not only by activists but also pro-Kremlin accounts and pro-Kremlin chats, and you can always see the type of text and the type and the narratives that they use. You can see them just repeated, and these people who create these chats or channels, they sometimes also come to activist groups and they just post the same text.
But they're real people and not robots.
They can be robots, and then they are very easy to find. They are very easy to pluck away because they don't react on direct messaging. But if they are real people, then very often they work in big factories. Like we know the story of Prigozhin, who
tell us briefly about this Prigozhin story.
So we have like this factory of bots that Prigozhin, maybe you know about Prigozhin, who did this mutiny in June and who is now supposedly dead. He over a couple of years, he built like a really big media imperium, where hundreds of people were paid for influencing the public and actually to prepare people for the war. But we didn't know that until last year. We didn't know that they were already preparing people for the war for so long time, but there are like hundreds of hundreds.
And how would they prepare people for the war?
They will just they get the narratives from president's administration, and they would kind of be creative about that and set up chats, Facebook pages, VKontakte pages, Twitter pages, channels on Telegram. They would set it up, and they would just be a news agency. So it's a kind of like supposedly news, but with a twist that is good for the Kremlin.
I want to ask Puma about this in the Chinese context, because I think that maybe the Chinese state is like has been the sort of leading edge of this type of stuff for many years. But first, I just wanted to follow up on one more point. You said that it's also a kind of outward facing, so not just about preparing people within the sort of territorial borders of Russia, but also to kind of prepare the world. Can you just say a few things? I mean, we can come back to it, but can you just say a few things about that?
Yeah, because preparing people for the war against Ukraine is not only important for the people inside of Russia. I think the Kremlin really used their narratives to gain as much support for that war internationally as possible. And we see it actually happening if we read the news that Russia is not condemned by the whole world about this war. There is a lot of support for the Kremlin. So
yeah, This is something I might like to come back to if we have time later. Puma, could you speak a little bit to the Chinese national context, the sort of 50 Cent phenomenon, if that's the right term?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but first, I want to respond to the Ukrainian because I was in Ukraine like 2 months ago, so doing the research, and I mean that totally fits. I mean, what you said is that when the full-scale invasion happened in 2022 in February, right? But Russia actually did all this information operation 4 months before that,
Yeah.
and they actually attacked 42 countries. I mean, to pave the road. I mean, to spread the conspiracy, and that is what China is doing right now too. So, for example, so our election is coming in 2 months. So most people would think that, hey, right before the election, we would get lots of fake news, conspiracy. But actually what China did is that they paved the road for conspiracy at least maybe 6 to 10 months before that.
And how did they do that?
So the way they did that is using lots of online influencers that I just mentioned, because for them, when we look into all these Chinese departments that are responsible for information operation, they are also responsible for stabilizing their own society. So the way they stabilizing their own society would be the way they attack other countries. So since 2020, if you look into all the internet volume, in China, you could notice that actually right now the online influencers on Weibo actually attract more audience than the official media. And that is it's quite insane. For China, they won't let anyone to suppress the official media. So which means that they did that intentionally because they know that using the online influencer is way more powerful than the official media since 2021.
The same here too.
Yeah.
Right. So right now, what they're doing is that they're doing it like ours. Especially to Taiwan or any other countries, to use the online influencer is not to really connect them. I would say that 2 or 3 years ago, they would directly contact the online influencer and saying that, hey, maybe help us to publish this story, we'll pay you some money for that. But right now, they're just using online donation because there are lots of influencers love live streaming. On YouTube. So whenever they saw the influencer talking about any anti-US, anti-NATO stuff, or praising China, they just donate them. So you could imagine the budget of one missile could donate more than 1,000 online influencers.
Yeah,
right.
This is so interesting because it seems to speak right to it's one of the central things that I wanted to get to in our discussion today is how does propaganda work in the 21st century? Because it's a concept from the 20th century. It's a very linear kind of top-down thing. And what you just described is it's a kind of a feedback mechanism that is happening where you can, I presume you can say, no, I didn't do that. There's, first of all, deniability. There isn't a direct message that is being sent from one point to another. It's rather a kind of just amplifying the signals that are already present in the environment. So it's the metaphor would be different than one of transmission, where it would be more like one of tuning into signals and turning up the volume in different places. Seems like a very helpful way to make sense of what you've just described.
Could I
was hoping that you would come in. I was just about to ask you.
Yeah, well, we don't, thank goodness we live in peace in the Netherlands, but the online propaganda and influence are also visible here. There was one accident last spring, which is, I don't know, for the Dutch-speaking people here, lentekriebels. It's about, there is some education program for children about sexuality or things like that. And there was the right-wing parties brought up an online propaganda about that that the government is teaching 4 years old about transgenders and something like that. And they made it huge. I thought, well, there's only one internet site, and they're talking about it, and who cares, and then it came in all my WhatsApp groups with other parents. My children are also in schools, and there was a theater thing, and also they used online influence. They used on commenting online, on Twitter, on all social media, and some people really believed that this is going on without even checking the website. And there was a book published about it from a writer, and the writer got also death threats. The book is not published anymore, or less published. It was actually crazy. We're like, what's happening now? And that was a part of this propaganda. Was also a right-wing party in the parliament talking about it. So it made that, it amplified that even more. So it was, an accident which made us think about this very much.
Just to add
go ahead.
one little remark, because this is one of the narratives of the Kremlin, anti-Western narratives of the Kremlin, which got its way into our society.
Yeah, because we have one pro-Russian, two pro-Russian parties.
So you're saying that this particular narrative, you feel like it could be traced back to the Kremlin?
Absolutely.
And what evidence do you have of that?
Because we have it's open. Russian politicians, they just say that. Like in the West, they force kids to do transgender. It's just in the open.
Yeah, no, I understand that you have also these kind of gurus like Alexander Dugin, who sort of philosophize about this stuff. But you also have it in like right wing,
it's the same club.
Rick DeSantis in American right wing politics.
Yeah.
I would like to sort of follow up with a very concrete question to you as a politician and a representative of a political party. Your party, D66, has been known for placing a very strong emphasis on education, as far as I understand.
Yes.
And so I would like to ask you then, because of that question, I believe that you were mentioning this is showing up in apps that kids have access to. There's a lot of discussion around that in this country at the moment about the sort of possible talks, not always about propaganda, but about toxicity in like TikTok and things like that. Yeah. So my question to you would be, there are countries where they have like media literacy education about information warfare, like along the Russian border, some of the countries there, Finland has a program where young children have, as part of their curriculum, a training in how to recognize and sort of inoculate them from getting sort of sucked into these kinds of narratives. So this would be my question for you. Like, is this part of the curriculum here in this country? And if not, should it be? And what would that look like? Like, would it be, a certain number of hours in a classroom? How would that work?
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's not a part of the curriculum yet. Some schools do it and some doesn't. The school of my children has media literacy as something they give to the children from 8 years on, and it's quite, at this moment, it's quite general. It's like how to use an iPad, how not to give your password to everyone or email address to everyone, and also, do we trust the information is going, is it an advertising, is it something you have used, where is it from? They do talk about it. I think it should be a part of the curriculum in the Netherlands, but every time if politicians say, well, schools should do this or that, then schools say, well, we don't have enough teachers, so that's the problem. But I think it should be a part, because our society is, and especially for the generation of my children, it's like 100% digital. Everything is on the phone, on the computer, or on the iPad. So if they don't have digital literacy, then they will not be able to participate in the world they grow up in. So it should definitely be part of the curriculum, and it should be one time about how to use the computer and how to protect your password, but also the information warfare is at this moment is not a part of the digital literacy, of media literacy, we call it, in our schools. Not yet, because it's more about, is it a commercial, is it fraud, like all the links on WhatsApp? Do you have to trust that? And not about Russia or China trying to influence us. That's not on top of minds yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to, because we're getting close towards the end, before we take some questions from the audience, I would like to try to thread these two big countries together, Russia and China. I know more about the Russian context, but certainly I'm not an expert like Kris. My impression is that that we are, in some sense, being pulled back into the 20th century, that there are these kind of big narratives about the kind of great game that is going on the world, and that Russia is, for example, presenting itself to many parts of the world, not necessarily directly on the topic of the war, but just sort of more generally as being the kind of this sort of fighting against the history of Western, specifically American imperialism, and that this and basically on the side of the exploited third world. And this narrative comes from the Kremlin. It comes out of their embassies, on their social media. And it does very well, I think, in Latin America, in parts of Africa, and in many parts of Asia. And I don't think this is something that is that well discussed in Europe. Europe is more concerned about Europe. Yeah. But this is a global situation that's going on. This is just much like there was a global situation going on in the 20th century. We're back there. So I was wondering if you would kind of reflect on this a little bit, and what it is that we could be doing to sort of be a bit more aware of this. It's good that Europe takes action on governing social media and so forth, but how does this issue get addressed?
I noticed that too. That I agree that that Kremlin is misusing the war against Ukraine in a bigger narrative of like a multi-centered world that's not only ruled by the United States and the West. They're really misusing it, and I also think that it's not only the countries in the global South, for instance, also Africa or South America and Asia, but it's also in our society, in our Western society, through a lot of left-wing parties, absolutely. And this goes back a little bit to when Soviet Union, like the communist rulers, would invest in left-wing ideologies and in left-wing activists, and this is still it's a kind of we see how it evolves now.
Yeah. Right. I mean, there was in the 50s, you had this phenomenon called entryism, where you would have like the sort of Trotskyite parties would try to enter into trade unions and sort of influence them from within. So these kinds of, it seems to me then like that you have these big, you open the newspaper and you see that Xi and Putin have kind of agreed on this or that, and you look at the resolutions that go on in the United Nations, as well, there's like a lot of countries that are not voting against these invasions and so forth. But we can't, it's hard to sort of call that propaganda in a sense too, right? Because this is politics. People have the right to their political opinions. There's, in some cases, legitimate arguments that the United States was an imperial power that exploited many parts of the world and did terrible things. That's not wrong.
I think it is propaganda because political system in Russia now, so the people who rule Russia, they don't want, actually, they're not aiming for changing their society for the people, for the society of people. They want to change the society for themselves, for just a couple of thousands of people who earn a lot of money with fossil resources. That's it, actually, because there is no program for how people would live better in this multipolarized world. So I think it is propaganda for personal winning.
Yeah, and for me, I think is that they are really good at collaborating with each other to push the narratives. So, for example, I mean, when Speaker Pelosi, I mean, from the U.S. visited Taiwan like last year, actually the media that on Twitter and on X right now that published the articles about the visit the most is actually Russia Today in Taiwan. And then there are like lots of like bots from China employed by Russia Today. They actually send a media agreement like a lot. So, and right now they're choosing the battlefield really good. So one example is that China is really pushing the narratives against Ukraine in Taiwan, but there are less than 50 Ukrainians in Taiwan. So there's no organization or anyone to really push that back. And Russia is also spreading the disinformation against Taiwan in Ukraine. And when I was in Kyiv, there are only like 3 Taiwanese over there, so no one pushed that. So I mean, gradually people would be influenced by that and saying that these two countries, I mean, not just Taiwan or Ukraine, they are responsible for something because the U.S. is in the back of it. They are trying to trigger the warfare. They want to sacrifice all these two countries. And more people believe in that. When I did one of the survey in our college asking students, who is like spreading this information here in Taiwan? 34% of them say China, but 20% of them said the U.S. Another 20% of said Japan. Because they are so influenced by Weibo and TikTok and thinking that it is all these Western countries try to spread this information in Taiwan because they want to sacrifice us.
Okay. Very stimulating discussions. We should give an opportunity to the audience, who I can't see very well, but we do have a sort of magic microphone, which will be sort of thrown at you, if you're okay with that. Yeah? There you go.
Thank you.
Okay. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, well, I think the concentration was very much on the Russian situation and not on the Chinese one. But if you look at it at a global scale, we in Europe are facing 3 types of totalitarianism. The capitalist in the United States, the Russian and the Chinese. But Russia has an atomized social fabric, and China is very community-oriented. And although the techniques may be the same of the two countries, Russia and China, I would be interested in the differences in effects of utilizing those techniques for both countries. For I think that the operations of Russia in Africa are of totally different order than the operations of China in Africa. That alone all suggests that there are deeper differences between the two nations.
Yeah, okay. So then I guess the question in a nutshell is about the kind of geopolitical strategies of state propaganda and the differences and similarities between the Russian and Chinese approach.
And the relation with the social fabric, okay. The orientation of the people.
And some ideas about I think that perhaps some Russians would dispute the idea, they tend to think of themselves as being very organic and sort of anti-modern and romantic and stuff. It's certainly something you hear a lot about by people like not Durov, but Surkov. But let's begin then, if we could, with a little bit more about what is distinct about the Chinese kind of geopolitical propaganda model, and how might it be distinguished from the Russian one on the ground, and the relationship, I suppose, with the people.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, first, China is more ambitious, actually. So our organization will actually establish an index called China Index. So we try to measure the Chinese information, not just information operation, but all kinds of influence operation all over the world. So we actually have a ranking for that. And for all this ranking, you could also check that what they're doing in Southeast Asia or what they're doing in Africa. So we break the Chinese influence operation into different domains, including like military, economy, media, blah, blah, blah. It's like 9 different domains. And you could see that in each different district or in each different region, they actually have different strategy. So that's number one. And number two is that comparing to Russia, I think Russia is more centralized, which means that China is very intelligence-based. So KGB is still like very important agency in Russia. So lots of them, I mean, the intelligence collected by them would be applied to their information or their propaganda to over the world. But the intelligence guys in China is not that important. I think they rely more on United Front Work Network, the offline activities. And also, there are so many departments there in China that are responsible for information operation, including the like Minister of State Security, I mean the police, the Communist Youth League, the PLA, and they actually compete with each other for the budget. So sometimes you could see that from different departments, they actually conflict with each other because they're asking for the money and also corruption involved. But I guess, I mean, Russia also got lots of, I mean, corruption issue too. So there are like lots of nuance there. But right now, if I say there's a huge salience, I mean, especially from China compared to Russia, is that China focuses more and more on hackers right now because they hack into the NAS, hack into the IP, using just one account to spread the disinformation, asking the journalists to pick that up, put it on political talk show. I mean, that's a very hacker-oriented disinformation campaign. I mean, Russia is still using activities, but their hackers are not as good as the Chinese one. So there are like lots of nuance over there, but I think I'll be short, but that's what I could say.
Oh, that's really helpful. I mean, I would actually like to just quickly follow up on that because there's probably quite some people here who use TikTok or have TikTok close by in their lives. And that is based on it's a sort of, as far as I understand, it's kind of like a skinning of basically just a Chinese social media app that is, if I understand correctly, a very large portion of the content is what you could call like state sponsored in some way. And this is stuff that is like not propaganda, it's like rap music and stuff, but somehow it has this kind of connection to the state. My understanding of TikTok, their policies here in this country is that they have a very strong position that they won't allow any state-sponsored media. Do you, as a kind of an expert on the Chinese information space, do you buy that? Like, should we take TikTok at its word? What do you think about this?
So as a Taiwanese, I never buy any arguments from China, but still, I mean, because I mean TikTok is so connected to Douyin, I mean the Chinese version, right? So and then in Douyin they have the party committee within, and then they also have lots of connections. I mean they could have the comment to TikTok without, I mean, really have someone in TikTok. So we don't really buy that. But the thing is not just about the narratives. I think the danger of the TikTok is getting private information. So for example, when you get into TikTok, they are getting your geolocation, they are getting your IP, and most importantly, I think previously they try to access your photo every 15 minutes. And then also within the browser, they also, I mean, try to steal, I mean, to try anything you copy and paste on your phone. So all this information gathered could help them to have some big data analysis. They would know that in this location, lots of people love fortune teller stuff. These people love like animals. So I can push all these, videos for them and then attract them. In the end, I don't need any disinformation, but after 2 or 3 years, and then I could spread some disinformation against someone because they have so connected with TikTok. I think that's the danger of TikTok right now.
Could I comment a little bit about TikTok, because that's a huge topic in the Dutch politics. I have invited TikTok to our parliament a couple of months ago to ask them about the national security aspect and their connection with China, and of course they denied any connection, and they said they changed their policies, but they still get a lot of private information, and I was worried about getting all these information and having Chinese access to the information. So I asked our government to stop using TikTok as government employees, because sometimes you have on your work phone some secret information that's maybe not relevant for us, but maybe relevant for China. Actually, TikTok did not deny any connection. They said theoretically Chinese employees could access some information for maintenance issues or for maintenance reasons. So they didn't 100% deny it, but they said, no, but we are not, we are a Singaporean company, trust us please. So I still don't trust them, really, and I don't have TikTok.
It's really interesting to try to make a distinction between form and content like that is just not the way that media works, right? Like everything's maintenance when it comes to
and
algorithms.
It feels like it's less freedom on the internet, because we would like a free internet like when I grew up in the 90s, but it's not so free anymore.
And just like one quick example is that when TikTok approached Taiwanese online influencer, they told them, if you move to TikTok, I'll give you 1 million followers at the very beginning. So I mean, that's the way you could bribe them. I mean, we talk about donation, right?
Give you 1 million.
Yeah. So if I'm like a YouTuber and then they ask you to have a TikTok account, it give you lots of followers, then you make money out of it. Yeah. And that's the way you could bribe them. You don't need to donate them on YouTube, but you could bribe them on TikTok.
So, wow.
So interesting. Maybe that speaks to your question of the people. Did you want to follow up, Kris?
Yeah, if there's time, I can...
I think so. I think we should take another question, but really quickly, if you want.
Yeah, just about the social fabric of Russia. As we know, that Putin is a KGB agent. So the government of Russia is... It was actually a KGB coup, say, in 1999, and it is so these narratives of Russia against the West. It's been already there for so long, and it actually never changed. Just a little period in the 90s, and then it was all manipulated through media. And as soon as Putin came to power, he started to limit freedom of speech through media. So we have seen that, and it's also very much based on violence, the Russian social fabric. So every power comes through violence. Yeah, and we saw that in Syria, we see that in Africa, we see that in Ukraine, and now we see that also, I'm sorry to say, but also through Hamas. Yeah.
We do have not exactly a question, but a comment from the online chat, which I will just read out to you. It says that it's not a question. I find it strange how the same group of right-wing politicians that spread pro-Russian propaganda are the same people that push anti-China fears or conspiracies. Is this something that anyone wants to speak to?
A little bit. Mm-hmm. I think I agree with this comment also, because you should always follow the money. You see the right-wing politicians are having very large donations from suspicious areas of the world, anonymous people, sometimes located in Russia, sometimes also located in China. As being in the West and Europe and also in the USA, Russia is more our focus than China at this moment. So they are spreading they are pro-Russian propaganda, because also they get the money directly or indirectly from Russia. But they don't always speak out about China. Actually, they are just in the Netherlands quite silent about it. Yeah.
Can I see if there are any more? Yes, there are. In fact, there's a question in the middle there. If you can give it a toss. Good catch.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. It's really thrilling to hear this discussion. And for me, it's one particular aspect which you mentioned. So we were speaking about bots and this distinction between bots and trolls. I wonder what AI plays in the bot development. Do you see any progress or like, I don't know, degress? Because I have an example in my surroundings. My partner started looking for a job and really, like, curiously enough, she started getting bot scam messages offering her a job for like 4,000 euros a week or something like this, and then she started like interrogating them and like asking to generate images, and they do. So I wonder, like, so this is like really, I think, very candid and kind of like example, but what about misinformation, disinformation, like very serious situations?
Yeah. Interesting question.
Yeah, so I mean, there are like so many different types of AI. So for example, one of the AI that China used previously is that because Chinese accent is very different from ours, so when they read the articles using the machine, they actually use the AI to download all our political talk show to make sure that their accent sounds very similar to our accent. So when they read all these articles and upload it on YouTube, it seems like it's Taiwanese people that are reading that fake news. So I mean, that's number one. And number two is that using AI to generate articles would be like very convenient, but China actually started using that 3 years ago. I mean, way before ChatGPT. So that's how they could like one news or like one content from websites could upload more than 500 news articles per day. And then during the election in 2020, they actually have 200 websites like that. And right now for the generative AI, I think the most important part would be on the trolls, because for now it's very easy for us to distinguish the trolls and bots. Right? But right now with generative AI, you might maybe being argued with someone that is AI, but you never figure that out. And they look like trolls. So I mean, luckily, I think bots, still does more harm to our society. But with generative AI, with all these generative AI trolls, they would be bots like trolls. And that might do more damage to our society.
Is there a question that you can ask an AI if you're not sure if it's an AI in order to figure out that it is an AI? Like, for example, when I'm asleep at night, I'm not sure if I'm sleeping, and then I read the text, and it's not the same thing when I read it. Is there something that you can do like that with?
I think especially for Chinese AI, there are like so many terms that they could not use. But still, if they use that to do the attack, when we argue with their AI, we're actually training them. So they would know that how we ask the questions. And then I think AI is like very neutral, but I think adversaries, people who have bad intentions always have the motivation to train that better than us who wants to do the defend. So I'm very pessimistic about that. I think generative AI would help a lot, especially on the authoritarian state, but not on us.
I actually wanted to I wanted to ask Hind, I was actually thinking I might ask you a question then about this AI, very, very briefly. So, like, maybe 5 years ago, when I first started doing this research, it was after Trump and Brexit, and we're all kind of awoken to the power of platforms to disrupt democracy. And now we're at this point where we have the Digital Services Act. There is a new law that I just read about yesterday that comes from Norway, which is going to be adopted by the European Union, that's saying that it's no longer going to be legal for Meta to do personalized, targeted advertising. So I'm not sure how TikTok is going to persist in that context either. So there's all these laws that are being implemented. Many of them are beginning just in January of this upcoming year. It's really new, and it took quite a while for that. But it is thanks to the persistence of activists and politicians and policy people. Now we're at this stage. It seems to me something similar with AI,
Yeah.
where we're kind of 5 years before that point. So what would your position be as a politician in terms of AI and these kind of what we've seen in terms of platform regulation that has happened from a policy and judicial perspective?
Of course, AI has been with us for quite a while. Algorithms has been also used by the Dutch governments in a good way and in a bad way also. So we have seen firsthand what it could do. But what my perspective at this moment is the influence of AI on social media and on democracy, like what is fake and what is not fake, is going to be large, and it's underestimated actually. In Europe, we have the AI Act. We are already doing that like last year or a year and a half ago, and it's almost finished. But then in November last year, ChatGPT just came alive, and all the negotiations about the AI Act and how to regulate AI in the market of Europe just was on hold. But I still think the AI Act should go on and should have a clause about the generative AI. What you should do is like the watermark, what is fake and what is not fake. You cannot do that in a chat, but when I see a picture online or a video, I should be able to know is it fake or is not. And if you obligate the social media platform or any other greater platform to write down, well, my picture is, AI generated, and that would be a first step, but it's the influence of amplifying the wrong message. I think it's underestimated, and I think it should be regulated somehow.
My understanding is that this conversation will actually continue
tomorrow in the afternoon.
In the afternoon, at what time is that?
I think 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, something like that?
Something like that.
So you will be coming back again tomorrow.
Yeah.
But Puma, you're actually going to be flying back all the way across the continents. So I would like to, and Kris, thank you, all three of you, for this really wonderful and meaningful discussion on a very pressing topic. I would like to give you a round of applause. And with that, we will end today's discussion. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and we can see you in the lobby for informal discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.